Ladies and gentlemen, once again, it's a joy to be here at the Libertarian Party 1993 convention in Sunnyvale, California. Let's hear it for ourselves. My name is Marshall Fritz. I get to be your debate moderator this evening, and the debate is an issue that is going to excite, or already is exciting, many members in the Libertarian movement, and will perhaps climax in Salt Lake City in just about 6 months from now. And that debate is on the issue of shall the membership pledge be eliminated and the platform be replaced. And it will be debated here tonight. And to my knowledge, this is the first time it's being debated at a Libertarian Party convention in California. In fact, this is the only convention held since this idea came up in Atlanta just recently. Our debaters tonight for the affirmative are Scott Lieberman, co-author of the Atlanta statement, and he is a radiologist here in the Bay Area. So let's hear it for Scott Lieberman. And taking the negative is Stephen Alexander, former member. Steve Alexander was on the national committee when this proposal came out, and during the discussion and aftermath of that has tendered his resignation as a member of the national committee of the Libertarian Party. Steve works as a man without a committee. Steve works here in the also in the South Bay area as a computer consultant. And would you please welcome Steve Alexander? I'll announce the rules so that all of us will feel informed, and then the debate shall begin. Scott, as the affirmative, will begin with a 5-minute opening statement. Steve will then come back with his 5-minute opening statement. Scott will take a 5-minute rebuttal. Steve will do a 5-minute rebuttal, and then we'll open it up to 30 minutes of hammer and tong. No, question and answers from the audience. I'm sorry. I'm reading the wrong notes here. After 30 minutes then, and by the way, in that 30-minute period, we had some rules, and we'll see if the audience thinks these are okay, and if we do, then I'll work to enforce those. We'd like the questioners to hold their questions to 30 seconds, and then a questioner can ask a question of either party, and then the party would have 2 minutes to respond. If the other party wasn't asked, he will also be offered the opportunity to respond for another 2 minutes. How many of us would prefer to limit the questions to 30 seconds, as we've suggested, rather than the traditional 30 minutes? May I hear a show of hands? Now, for those of you who do have 30-minute questions available, we will be listening to all of those here in this room after we've left to go to the various parties. Okay, so we'll leave the microphone on. At the end of this charming, fun-filled question and answer period, we will then return to Scott, who will give his closing arguments, and then Steve with his closing arguments. So the issue is, shall the membership pledge be eliminated and the platform be replaced? Will you welcome, please, Mr. Scott Lieberman.
Okay, let's hope that this is loud enough, okay? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very, very much for coming to the 1993 Libertarian Party of California Convention, and also thank you very much for coming to this debate. By the way, those of you that didn't do high school or college debate should know that calling Steve's side the negative has nothing to do with the merits of his case. That's just standard nomenclature. Maybe status quo would be a more value-neutral term, but anyway, okay. I joined the Libertarian Party around 1977, 1978, and for the first 5 years, I probably did what a lot of people did. I voted Libertarian, but didn't do much else. And then in 1982, I moved to New York, and there was a local Libertarian Party active there, and I did start getting a little bit involved. But the 4 years I was there, they only ran one candidate for office during that whole time period, and it just kind of seemed, they would go and talk about libertarian topics and so forth, but I was kind of interested in getting people elected. Well, then I moved out here to California, and you guys were great. You're running all kinds of candidates and stuff, but, we still really weren't electing people to office. And that's kind of the reason that sort of brought me to go to Atlanta, and I'll get to that in a few seconds. I'd like to read a quote from what is probably the only book that has the words Libertarian Party in its title. It's written by Joseph Hazlitt, and it's called The Libertarian Party and Other Minor Political Parties in the United States. Now, he spells his name with an E, so I don't think he's related to the Hazlitts with an I, but nevertheless, I shall read the quote. The Libertarian Party must become more pragmatic, accept the federal matching funds, get elected, and then implement its plans and ideas for change, constantly serving as a political martyr, willing to accept defeat as long as their ideas get out, will not sustain the party for much longer. It is time to compete, and the only way to do it is by using the political devices established by the two major parties to ensure status quo democracy. It is time to change the status quo. And I should add, this book just came out last year. You have to understand that the platform and the oath positions that we take are part of a long document that most of you have probably seen in Libertarian Party news. And I just want to read the mission statement, which was the very first thing that we came up with. And that says, the mission of the Libertarian Party is to move public policy in a libertarian direction by electing candidates of the Libertarian Party to public office. And everything that we said in that statement, including changing the platform and eliminating the pledge as a requirement for membership, comes from that statement. I just want to mention a few quick things that we said in the Atlanta statement that don't have to do with the platform and the pledge, and I'll explain that in a second. One of the things, for example, was create a libertarian data book that included vote totals and lists of elected libertarians. I mean, I think I've seen one list of elected libertarians in the past decade or so. I've seen lists of candidate vote totals, but I haven't seen the list of elected libertarians. The other thing is that the Atlanta statement wanted to elect 5 state representatives outside of New Hampshire in 1994 and raise $1 million towards that goal. Now, some people have called this, sure, these are great apple pie motherhood goals and everything, but our question was, well, then how come they haven't been done for the past 20 years, Let me get to the oath and then hopefully get to the platform in the first 5 minutes here. Okay. The statement of principles is going to remain. Nobody in the Atlanta delegation has said anything about changing or eliminating the statement of principles. That's important because the statement of principles is a much better, in a lot of people's opinion, statement of the non-initiation of force principle, and that is going to remain the guiding, statement for the party. This will keep people focused on the non-initiation of force principle. Okay. I'd like to read a quote from the latest issue of the Liberty Bell, which is the state newsletter. Unlike the Democrats and Republicans you have inserted, seemingly as a qualifier of membership in your application form and oath, I am so disgusted I threw the form away. Over the next 2 days I got angrier until I finally dug it out of the paper trash and decided to write. Someone wrote this certification. It's your line, I hereby certify, and someone decided it should appear on your application. Did your membership have a voice in this? Wasn't it done by one, or at most a consensus of some group in your headquarters office? And what is the point of it? What good does it do? In my estimation, this one line on your application form disallows all the good and positive things you say elsewhere and demonstrates your belief that government still comes from the top down. And that's on the, and I want to quote another person here on the platform, who's, I think, in the room somewhere, John Wilkes from Santa Cruz. I have posted previously my argument that the current platform document is a very poor campaign tool and needs to be written with a 2 to 4 year focus. I will repeat my advocacy of a new platform with the current platform document expanded and renamed Libertarian Vision or something. We need both. Now, these comments are just representatives of dozens, if not hundreds of, well, not hundreds of people have commented yet, but certainly dozens have commented on the fact that just the platform needs to be changed in some way or another. And I'd like you to read the Atlanta statement very carefully and hopefully adopt and start working on those principles. Thank you.
Well done. Used every second. And now, please, would you welcome, for his opening statement, Mr. Steve Alexander. Steve?
The Libertarian Party is over 20 years old. There have been many, many third parties in the history of the United States, and most of them didn't make it that far. How have we lasted? Is it because we got constant positive reinforcement at the polls? I'm afraid not. One of the tools we've had, one of the things that has supported us all these years, are the institutions that define what we are, that set a standard for what we are, and maintain it over time. One problem that a lot of political parties have is ideological drift. Does everyone remember the original meaning of the word liberal? It's changed. It's become a mockery. And it seems that liberal is pretty clear to anyone with any acquaintance of Latin. How could it mean what it means today? Well, I'm afraid the liberals didn't have a statement of principles, and they didn't have a sufficient platform or pledge. I have here the platforms this year from the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. A lot of people have criticized our platform as not being as good as theirs. And, well, not the content, but perhaps the style. And that a platform like this would certainly guarantee us victory, as it did for George Bush. Their platform begins, Abraham Lincoln, our first Republican president. They have to go back a ways to find someone they'll boast about. Expressed the philosophy that inspires Republicans to this day. And the philosophy goes on and it ends, government ought not interfere. Well, the Republican Party, in a little over 100 years, went from the radical Republicans that passed a constitutional amendment freeing the slaves and bedeviled the South in Reconstruction to Richard Nixon and the Southern Strategy. The Democratic platform looks a lot smaller, but that's because they use fine print. 200 summers ago, this Democratic Party was founded by a man whose burning pen fired the spirit of the American Revolution, who once argued we should overthrow our own government every 20 years to renew our freedom and keep pace with a changing world. In 1992, the party Thomas Jefferson founded invokes his spirit of revolution anew. We, the members of the Democratic Party, challenge the cult of the omnipotent state. I made up that last part. That's what you get when you don't have a membership pledge. I was going to read the same passage from the same letter in Liberty Bell. I think it provided a great service. I was going to read exactly what Scott read and finish up by saying, the pledge works. Every organization, if we compare the party to a corporation, just for a moment, analogies are misleading, but bear with me. Every corporation needs an accounting department and a sales department. And a company that's run by its accounting department gets into trouble. A company that's run by its sales department gets into trouble. The salespeople tend to dress better, be more polished, be more articulate. They wear pinky rings. And without them, there wouldn't be any revenue. But if you have the sales department, is that me? Thank you. If you have the sales department designing the product, they may find it harder to sell than they think. Thank you.
Scott, you have 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, I tell you, 5 minutes goes by very quickly. Okay. I'd like to thank my opponent for giving a very good defense of both the reason we need to have a pledge and the reason that the platform should remain as it is. But again, the reason that the Atlanta proposals came out was that you have to elect people to office to change things. That's just the way it is in this country. I mean, we all have, at least all those of us who are members have signed the non-initiation of force pledge, or oath, or whatever you want to call it. And that means that you're not going to use violence to overthrow things. Well, the only other real avenue left is by electing people to office. We're going to have elected officials from California speaking to you tomorrow. I'd like you to listen to them. I mean, and listen to how much fun they've had in office and what changes they've actually been able to do. But the problem is that they had to do those things necessary to get elected. And what that basically means is you got to walk around and talk to a lot of people and shake hands and kiss babies and so forth. You got to do these things in the trenches, and you can't just do it by yourself as a candidate. You need volunteers. You need warm bodies, lots and lots and lots of warm bodies. Where do you get those warm bodies? You get them from your membership mostly. Sure, you're going to get some people that aren't members that are going to want to help you, but basically you want to get your membership up there as high as possible so you have people helping you out. We don't need barriers to joining the party. A person does not have to be a 100% libertarian to help us out and to feel comfortable with us. You know, you've heard the analogy that Gene Burns has used about the railroad train. Well, we don't want to shove people off even before they get on the train. We got to let them get on the train and go at least a little bit of the ways with us. And the oath, as you just heard, that is one person, but that Steve, quotes that one letter. I mean, I'm on the computer network, and there are multiple people that have said that they had to think long and hard before they signed the oath. And the reason was not because that they're down in the 30-30 area on the Nolan chart, but they were probably up there in the 80-80 or 90-90 area. But there's maybe one thing that, for example, let's say that they do feel there has to be some minimal level of taxation to run a national defense, but otherwise they're totally libertarian. Well, in good conscience, how can they sign the oath? I mean, it says, I will not initiate force, yet you are initiating force to raise money for national defense. So a person who really, really thinks it through and is only in 190 might not sign the pledge. So that's the reason that we want to have as many people as possible joining us, and they don't have to be 100% pure or even 90% pure to help us. Okay, on the platform, I should say, first of all, that we have not said that we're trashing the platform. There have been some people that have been saying that the platform can become something else, a vision document or whatever, and the Atlanta people have made any comment on that one way or the other. All we said is that the document that we call the platform should be similar, not identical necessarily, but similar to the program that we have now, 10 topical planks written over a 2 to 4 year perspective. Now, if you think that you have a very, way of getting rid of the IRS in 2 to 4 years, fine, we can put that in there, but it has to be explained in a very good way. If you only want to reduce taxes by 25% over that 4 years, then that's what we'll have, and that's what we're saying. You need transitional things. And as you can, most of you have read the platform, obviously it does not speak in transitional terms. It speaks in terms of end goals. Now, that's a fine thing in a certain place, but the media has defined a platform as something that will get us, through the next 2 to 4 years. And that's why we felt it was extremely important to get our platform in its, form, not its content, but its form, the same as the other two parties, or I should say the larger parties. Okay. Just yesterday, by sheer chance, I ended up talking to Sheldon Richman on the phone. He's, of course, works for the Cato Institute, and he did work for the party in the 70s and the early 80s, and left around 1983, 84. And I asked him what he thought about this pledge and platform business, and he said that it probably was a good idea to get rid of the pledge for membership because there are already so many barriers against third parties getting on the ballot and raising money and so forth, that he thought that we should get rid of it for membership so that we can have as many people as possible feel comfortable joining us. Okay, just another person I'd like to quote. Jackie Bradbury was another person on LiberNet. He's in Missouri, and he was commenting on what John Wilkes said about the platform, and he said, "This is precisely my problem with our platform. We spend so much time talking about where we want to go, but we haven't decided how we're getting there. What can we accomplish in the next 2, 5, 10 years? How? These are the questions I get asked, and to be honest, there is no guideline from National." And that's typical of a lot of people commenting on the computer network, and just people I've talked to informally saying the same thing. Now, the problem is that, perhaps the current platform could be changed that way, but you probably have to make it 100 pages long and spend a lot of time, taking care of it. We're talking about a very short document.
And Steve Alexander, please come on back up.
Thank you. Let's talk about the actual suggestions that have come out of the Atlanta statement. What is the problem we're trying to solve here? Well, we all want the party to be bigger. And I believe that that was the good intentions of the people who met in Atlanta. However, if you try to solve a problem the wrong way, it doesn't get solved, and something else can get lost in the process. Let's talk about the membership pledge. Tens of thousands of people have signed it across the country. Most of them are not currently members of the party. As a matter of fact, you'll find that when a person joins, let's say, the California Party, there's a 40% chance that that person will leave after 1 year. They will never renew. 60% of them either renew and keep renewing, or maybe go away for a while and come back. But how did we lose those people? It wasn't the pledge. Because after all, they signed the pledge. It was something else that turned them away. And that's perhaps the problem we need to address. We need to be more effective. We need to have special programs to deal with the people who come in new. As a national committee member, and previously as an LPC executive committee member, I heard all sorts of horror stories about local organizations. There are a lot fewer horror stories today than there have been in the past, and the growth of the party reflects that. If we're trying to deal with growth, we should look at what we did in 1991 when the Libertarian Party went from 2,000 to 4,000. We should look at what the National Party has done over the past 3 or 4 years when they went from 6,500 to over 11,000. There are ways to grow, and that growth has occurred with the pledge. In terms of the platform, once again we have a communications problem with our sales department. They're trying to cut wood with a hammer and saying there's something wrong with this tool. Well, yes, there is. Don't cut wood with the hammer. The platform has a purpose, and it's for us, the people who are already here. It's for us to decide what it is we believe and put it in writing and be able to refer to it and have some assurance that when we work to build the party, what we're building is a libertarian party in fact as well as in name. Now, what the sales department needs, and they deserve our help too, what the sales department needs is outreach literature. And so a few years ago, we created something called, at the national level, the Libertarian Party Program. That was actually proposed by Ed Clark, member of the California Party. The program has existed for many years. Most recently, the program was developed by a committee chaired by a fellow named Steve Gibbett from Illinois, who is prominent. He's a nice guy most of the time. Who's prominent among the group supporting the Atlanta proposals. He was in Atlanta. Recently, he said on the computer network, and even the program is much too negative. Well, Steve, it was your job. So I would say we can solve the problem. We can have outreach literature. Perhaps we can't have outreach literature that will satisfy Steve. He was the chairman of the platform committee, and he doesn't like the platform. He was chairman of the program committee, and he doesn't like the program. But that doesn't mean that those two documents cannot be made effective for all of us. I think if you take a look at our program, you'll find it is effective. And so let's use it. Thank you.
Seeing no questions, we will... Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you would have had your hands up already, you know. And, ooh, okay, there they are. Fine. Will you come up here and line up behind this rostrum, please, in alphabetical order by the second letter of your middle name? Yeah. We want this to be orderly. "30 seconds, yeah. And the rules for the questioners, I'd like to ask each questioner to state his name and what part of the state he comes from, or he or she comes from, who you're directing your question at, and then your 30 seconds will begin. And I'll start waving to you at about 29. And then it's too good. They figured it out. This is theirs and that's theirs, so good. So let the fun begin.
My name is Aaron Starr. I'm from Simi Valley. Some of you know me as... My name is Aaron Starr. I'm from Simi Valley. Some of you know me as the campaign consultants for Sandy Webb and for Bonnie Flickinger, who both ran successful races in California. Thank you very much. I sent out a letter to all 16 members of the Atlanta Statement, all the authors, and to all the members of the National Committee, and I suggest a compromise, and I want the two advocates of both sides to comment on it. I propose this: the platform be renamed to be called the Libertarian Party Vision. Instead of calling them planks, they'll have objectives.
Can you close this up as a question?
I'm trying.
You are 30 seconds.
I'm really trying here. We have a new document called the platform, which will be underneath the vision.
I got to say thank you very much for the question, and now we're going to have the answers. Who wants to answer it first? Okay. And you can get back at the end of the line and get yourself prepared.
Aaron's proposal was to make the platform into the vision statement and make something like the program into the platform. I think we should call something what it is. A vision statement, I don't know what that means. Thank you. That should have been an applause slide, sorry. Aaron also suggested that we have a pledge, well, the pledge, for officers, candidates, delegates, but not for membership. I don't see that as a compromise. I see that as sort of creating two classes of membership within the party. I believe that once you pay your admission to Disneyland, you should ride all the rides. It doesn't take an e-ticket to go on Space Mountain, and I would hate to bring it in sort of like, hi, you've been a contributing, hard-working member of the party for 5 years, but you can't run for chair because you never signed this. That would not diminish the problems associated with the pledge. It actually brings it into daily discussion. And so I say, when a person is a member of the party, I know who I'm dealing with, and I'd like it to stay that way. Thank you.
Okay. Let me just tell you about this pledge and oath thing. For the purpose of the debate, I've been calling this a pledge, but let me read a definition of the word pledge, which is from the American Heritage Dictionary: a formal promise to do something as the performance of an obligation or duty, or to refrain from doing something. Now, let me read you the definition of oath: a formal declaration or promise to fulfill a pledge, often calling upon God or some other sacred object as witness. Now, whether I call it pledge or oath doesn't matter that much. The point is there are thousands and thousands of people out there that perceive this thing as an oath. And a lot of people just don't like to sign oaths. Or people who are, as I've mentioned before, who are really, really read this very carefully and think about it, cannot in good conscience sign it if there are only 90 on the Nolan chart. We need to get rid of these barriers as much as possible. And in terms specifically answering Aaron's question about his document he sent out, let me just say, the Atlanta people did not take a position either way on whether the oath should be retained for delegates and National Committee members and I guess officers. We also did not take an official position on whether the platform could become a vision statement and make the program into the platform. Doesn't say anything about that. We just said what the platform should become, the 10 up to 10 planks of a topical nature and so forth. Unofficially, I can't speak for the Atlanta people, but my personal opinion is that I would accept the membership oath as retained for people in the National Committee and delegates and officers, basically to keep people focused. If that's what it takes to get everything else in the Atlanta proposals passed and so forth, I'd be happy to accept that. But for basic membership, as I say, we don't want to turn people away. In terms of the platform, switching them around basically with the program, at least as a first step, I think the current program has to be worked on quite a bit to get it into a good outreach document. I think that we should... I agree that would be a good first try, and I would certainly not be against doing that. In fact, there is a document I've heard mentioned on LiberNet called the Republican Creed, which apparently is something like what our current platform is, but I don't know if anybody here has ever read it. I certainly haven't. Thanks.
Okay, I remind the questioners that I am a bleepity bleep sometimes, and tonight's one of those times. So go ahead and introduce yourself. The timing doesn't. Until after you finished your introduction.
Hello, my name is Fred Heiser. I'm a salesman from Santa Clarita, although I don't have a pinky ring.
You're on.
Aaron kind of stole my thunder on the platform. I'd like to point out, though, that the large parties have defined platform before we even came up with ours, and ours doesn't fit their definition very well. My objection to the oath, or loyalty pledge, as I like to think of it, is that it presumes in advance that I might be a violent person and that I have to certify to you my purity before I can be allowed into your special group. Right. End of question. Answer that. Both of you, please.
Okay, well, Fred, as I've stated, I agree with you that it looks like an oath. As I say, if it walks like an oath, and it looks like an oath, and it talks like an oath, it's an oath. And if you read, Robert Heinlein, the famous science fiction writer, I have to admit, I'm not a science fiction fan, but I did read this book of his because it came out in the late 1940s. It was reissued last year because of the Perot phenomena, and it's basically how to get people elected. And it talks about how you have to go out there and get the votes, and you got to basically walk your precinct. You have to be very nice to people, and sometimes you even have to compromise. I know that sounds horrible, but unfortunately, that's just the way politics is. And no matter what we do, we're not going to be able to change those basic tenets of human nature. And that's basically what the oath is preventing. I mean, to get libertarians elected, we're going to need, tens of thousands of people nationwide to be able to get those few hundred, people just into state legislatures. Forget about Congress. And we want those people can help us. They can walk around. They can get votes, even if they agree with us just a little bit. And I don't want to turn them. If they want to help us, I don't want to turn them away. That's basically the idea. As Aaron's original statement, if we retain the membership oath for the VIP, so-called, in the party, we can, at least have the leadership of the parties have certified somewhere in print, that in writing that they've agreed to abide by the non-initiation of force principle. That's about it. Thanks.
It's interesting that the people who seem most concerned about the Libertarian Party presenting an appealing image and saying things just right to outsiders are so careless in their language among their friends. It's not an oath. It's not a pledge. If you read the bylaws say there are two requirements. Well, there's one requirement for membership at the national level. The person has to have indicated in writing that he or she opposes the initiation of force for social and political goals. Theoretically, that bylaw allows us to give him a yes-no checkoff. Calling it an oath, calling it a pledge, calling it the idiotic oath, calling it the sacred oath, calling it the loyalty oath, calling it the Joe McCarthy oath, doesn't really sway me. As a matter of fact, I find it hard to be persuaded by salespeople who adopt a nasty tone to me. And I think that's true of the other members. But what is the oath costing us in terms of membership? Here in California, we went from 2,000 to 4,000 members. I think that was a great achievement. How many of them didn't want to sign the oath? Or, there you see, I said it myself. How many didn't want or overlooked the place where we asked them to sign agreement of a particular statement? The answer is 8%. That's what we're losing. Now, we may be losing some people who have so much difficulty committing to anything that just seeing a place to sign on a piece of paper turns them off. I'm not sure those people are really cut out for politics. That's what we're here for. We get up and we say what we believe, and we let people know. And if you can't say it, well, maybe there's something else that person should be doing. Thank you.
With apologies to Fred and Aaron and other libertarians who have not yet listened adequately to David Berglund's tape on how to express yourself in 30 seconds. And with the agreement of both of our debaters, we're going to extend the question asking time to 1 minute. But I did sense in the audience a real antagonism that Aaron was not able to complete his remarks, and I sensed in Fred an antagonism that he wasn't able to complete his remarks. So we're going to do it for 1 minute. And speaking of David Berglund, I'd just like to interrupt all of these proceedings to recognize the 1984 presidential candidate of the Libertarian Party. And David, will you stand and take one more time To those of you who are new, he is very good about signing autographs. Just be nice. Okay. Kim, take it away.
My name is Kim Goldsworthy. Forgive the tongue-in-cheek sarcasm. It isn't intended. How about this as an idea? For those who want to vote in the Libertarian primary, we make it as easy as possible. If you want to affiliate with the Libertarian Party, we make it as easy as possible. But if you want to be a party member in terms of running the party, being an officer, then we have a pledge. What do you think of that idea?
Well, of course, Kim brings up a good point. There are 71,000 people out there who call themselves libertarians, and all they did was sign an affidavit, and that's fine with me. There are 4,000 people, or 4,000 minus 8%, who want to be eligible to vote for officers, who want to be eligible to participate in platform and bylaw debates, and that's fine with me too. Thanks, Kim.
Okay. Well, anyway, okay. In terms of letting the officers, I think that's a great idea. If that's what it takes, as I said, to get people interested in these proposals and to accept all the proposals, then if you want to have those people sign the pledge, that's fine. As I say, we're not going to object to it. Let me just mention one thing here. Of those 40% that Steve mentioned who never renew in the California LP, I'm curious as to whether anybody's ever asked them why they haven't renewed. And one reason that I would guess is because the Libertarian Party just hasn't been successful electing people. I mean, that's the reason why the 49ers have more fans than most other football teams. It's at least up until this year. It's because they were extremely successful. Same thing with baseball teams. I mean, people like a winner, and that's what we need to have. Really, is a philosophy of winning, and having the documents that the platform as it is, with very technical language, and if you read it, actually, it also has a lot of negative language in the sense that we oppose, and there's a little bit of positive language, but not nearly enough. And that's the kind of thing that people when they take a look at it, they just don't get excited enough. And we need to have people excited about the party, excited enough to want to be volunteer for campaigns, and excited enough to get out there and get people elected to office. And you got to do that with positive statements, not with negative statements.
Bob Weber. Bob Weber, Southern California Vice Chair. I'd like to address this to both Scott and Steve. At the last national convention, I spoke with Carl Oglesby, who was chairman of Students for Democratic Society in the early 1960s. The SDS started out as a very libertarian organization. He said that unfortunately its membership grew tremendously. The membership growth was all in communists and FBI agents, and it became something completely different from what it started out to be. If we don't have the pledge, how can we keep opportunists out of the Libertarian Party?
We can't. There have been a lot of attempts from one group or another to take over another group. For instance, we libertarians tried in the 1970s to take over the Peace and Freedom Party as a way to get ballot status. In the 1980s, two groups of libertarians spun off and tried to take over the Republican Party. But the moral majority beat them to it. And when Perot withdrew from the race the first time, I visited a group of Perovians, and one of them remarked, well, maybe we should take over the Libertarian Party. That's where we should go from here. Fortunately, it didn't happen. So it's a concern, and this is one institution. The Statement of Principles, with its 7/8 vote requirement, is another institution that tries to make the party we built stay our party.
Yeah, Bob, that is a very good question. The answer is very simple. The price of liberty is eternal vigilance. That's what all of you out there will have to do if the party grows. I mean, when you're going to have to get out and get your people, yourselves and all your friends and all the fellow members that agree with your position on the issues, whatever they may be, and get them out to the polls on primary day when we have libertarian primaries and get them to vote. And then on election day, get them out to vote so they can vote for libertarians and get them into office. And that's basically the model that the Republicans and Democrats have, is that, if you want to control the way the party goes, you get your people out. And that's how you do it. Having an oath, as you can say, their people can lie. They can, and that doesn't, having the oath doesn't protect people from signing it and not really meaning it. And I'm sure you've all heard about people who have run for office as libertarians who have said something, oftentimes on the abortion issue, but sometimes on other issues, that it goes totally against the platform. And a lot of those people have signed the oath. And I also should say that right now, people can run for office as libertarians in the state of California and in most other states where you can register libertarian without having signed the pledge or oath. And you can't change that because there's state law. And so right now, people can infiltrate the party, and there's really nothing we can do about it except, from what I just said a few seconds ago, get your people out to vote and defeat those people at the polls. So yes, Bob, it is going to take a lot more work, but we're going to have to do that if we want the party to grow.
Come on up, young lady.
I will be getting my name at the end of my introduction. Not to worry, Marshal Fritz. I take my understanding from the Libertarian Party from Roger Bloxham, David Nolan, and David Berglund, and Kim Goldsworthy. I am relatively new to the Libertarian Party, and my name is Linda Grau from Irvine. I'm coming from a place that methinks it would be a good idea to change the platform every 2 to 4 years, even shorten it to live and let live. I am very much for keeping the pledge. And I would like to ask a question of Steve and Scott. My question is, isn't the pledge a protection from a mindless, thoughtless, Manny Klausner's enemy, the state?
Well, I didn't stop that at the wrong point.
Welcome to the party. The pledge serves a variety of purposes. It is a protection. It's also a means of self-identification, self-definition, and definition to others. As a former NatCom rep, I get calls from people all over the country, and they call up and say, "Hi, I'm a libertarian in Georgia or New York or Wisconsin." And I can assume, and I'm almost always right, that that person has no plans to initiate force against me. So it's also a sense of community. We, in politics, the first step is to stand up and say what you believe. And That, I think, is the biggest thing that the pledge does for us, aside from all those other things as well. Thank you.
As I say, really, there's not too much I can add to what I've said before about the pledge. How can I say it? I'm just trying to think of the exact terms to use, but I just can't think of it. But think about the pledge as this: if if somebody comes up to you on the street and hands you this card, what's the first thing you're going to do? They want you to sign it. You're going to read it, and you're going to start saying, what is this? And a lot of people have ended up getting into 45-minute arguments or so about what this thing means, and that's just not the way you want to sell a political party. You want to sell a political party by smiling, by talking about the things that people want to hear about. And as we say, the statement of principles, according to the Atlanta proposal, would stay. And there are other mechanisms you can use other than right at the point of sale of trying to keep the party, going in a libertarian direction. And I should go one last thing. Go back to the mission statement that we said is that we want to elect libertarians to move public policy in a libertarian direction. I mean, libertarianism has been around for well over 20 years, and I think most of us can pretty much agree on the basic principles, even though we might disagree on the finer points. And we're not trying to get away from that.
We have a flash announcement. Someone has sent his checkbook up, Mr. James Lieberman, with the intent to purchase an entire skid of Restoring the American Dream. So let's hear a big round of applause for Mr. Lieberman. See me at your convenience. Take it away.
My name is Richard Newhouse, and I'm somewhat speaking for Richard Body here. I spoke to him earlier, and he stuffed one of these letters in my hand, and I've had a chance to read it, so I'm largely plagiarizing Richard Body's ideas here. He suggests that the certification is unclear and negative in its current language. It's sort of like suggesting what we don't believe in. We don't believe in violence and so on, initiating force. What he's suggesting is turn that negative into a positive. And he pulls the positive suggested substitution sentence essentially from the second paragraph of the Statement of Principles, which I found on the back of my California Libertarian Party card. He's modified it a little bit to read as follows. In other words, instead of saying, as currently in the negative language, I hereby certify that I do not believe in or advocate the initiation of force as a means of achieving political or social goals, he's suggesting substituting the positive statement, which essentially is the same thing. Quote, I believe in and support the right of all individuals to live in whatever manner they choose, so long as they do not use force or fraud to interfere with the equal rights of others to do the same. End quote. Positive light.
Please comment.
Okay. Those of you who have been reading the computer network LiberNet would be seeing 20 or 30 messages a day over the past few months, and a lot of them have been about what kind of wording, alternate wording can we have for this certification or pledge or oath that would be acceptable to the vast majority of people in the party. And we've had a heck of a lot of trouble coming to something. And the reason is because it's difficult, because these words are really hard to define, and if we're having trouble defining them, how can we expect other people outside the party who don't know about us to understand what we're trying to say? And that's the thing. We need guiding principles, certainly. I mean, this is a party of principle, and we want to keep it the party of principle. That's why I said the statement of principles would remain, and if you read that, I think that basically goes into much better detail about it. But we don't need to have people reading that right initially out. We just, it'd just be a lot easier to have people join the party by, I would say, writing a check, and that's it. And then they can read the LP News and find out all about our positions. And I think that's a lot easier and would really increase the party membership a lot more.
I think that wording deserves a good look. It's a lot easier to get someone to disagree with one concept, the initiation of force, than to say what that person does agree with. Negatives are easier than positives, but positives are good ways to say things. The problem is to figure out what short, succinct statement defines a person as a libertarian. And that's something we've all wrestled with for a long time. We've got something in the bylaws that doesn't actually specify the wording that a person needs to sign. And it's something worth looking at. Thanks.
Our speakers have volunteered to reduce their answering time so that we can get through all of the remaining questions. And if it goes real fast, Terry's going to come back up and get that last slot in. But I couldn't do that to our keynote speaker, but Terry I didn't know as well. So, Dagny.
Thank you. My name is Dagny Sharon, and I'm from Southern California. And regarding the pledge, I believe that it should be voluntary, so some people sign it and some people don't. And my reason is because even nuns don't have to take their final vows until they've checked out the organization. Regarding the platform, I too have wrestled with it, and when I found out that we were going to have a platform debate, I wrote my own. Some of you have already received copies of it, and I have more that you can receive afterwards. The reason why I come up with this 2-sentence platform is because why hasn't the Libertarian Party assumed its rightful place as the party of morality? Why are we perceived as immoral? Well, it's because we are in favor of legalizing drugs, in favor of legalizing prostitution. So I took some research that Richard Mayberry of the Henry Madison Press wrote, and he researched every religion that's ever been written, oral or written, I should say, and every moral code that has ever been written, and finds that there are 2 laws that everybody agrees on. And of course, one of the problems with the platform in California is for the last 20 years that we don't even have a consensus. We barely have a majority. So the 2 laws are, do that which you agree to do, which is the basis of contract law, and do not harm the person or property of another, which is the basis of criminal law. And all other man-made, bureaucratic,
political question now.
No, I'm sorry, I'm just using the minute as a statement, sorry. And so
You've got a minute 30 seconds, Dagny.
What? I have 1 sentence. 1 sentence?
Ask the question.
All other laws are immoral. Won't that make, gentlemen, wouldn't a 2-sentence platform saying that these 2 laws are the basis of our party we're the party of morality, solve the problems of the party and the way we're perceived by people we want to join us? Thank you.
Okay. Dagny, I applaud your effort to trying to condense 20 years of work into 2 sentences. However, again...
I like live and let live, though. That was even shorter.
However, I just don't know if the other 10,000 or so members of the National Party, not to mention the hundreds of thousands of people out there that would like to vote for us, would let us get away with that. I mean, I certainly agree with the 2 statements you said, but we have to provide the voters, I think, with a little bit more substance than that. We're not going to get off scot-free. Although certainly some of the people might like to, but no. No, seriously, honestly, we do have to maintain our principles, and there is probably some form of statement between the 1-sentence non-initiation of force pledge and the 16-page or so platform, and that's what we're trying to come to with our proposed platform. And as I say, just read the program and read the current platform, and just pretend that you had never seen either document before, and just think about how you react to it.
I agree with Scott. And to be brief, I'm forced to be flippant. I'm sorry. I don't think the platform can be left as an exercise for the reader. It could be that we can derive it all from 2 statements, but not everybody can, and not everyone will put the time in. Also, as to the question of making the pledge voluntary, it is voluntary.
My name's Dick Ryder. I'm
perennial candidate and successful litigant against the state. More on that tomorrow. The most important aspect, however, is that I, for about a year, answered the 800 line. And probably more than any other person in this room, with one or two exceptions, I have dealt with more calls from more candidates, more potential people for the party than anyone's ever dealt with. And I can tell you it is a grueling experience to have to explain over and over why we have the pledge or oath. We can call it whatever we want, but it is viewed as cultish by people on the outside. And I'll tell you what it is. The people who refuse to sign it are not the people who are not libertarians. They are frequently the people with the greatest principles. People who don't have strong principles don't care about signing it. The people who aren't signing it are some of our very best people. We've lost some terrific people, I can tell you that. We really have lost some good people, and it's sad. My question would be, and we'll turn this into a question, can we be a serious party if we present ourselves as a cult?
No, and thank you.
It's hard to answer the question. It's a hypothetical because we don't present ourselves as a cult.
Senor?
Oh, dear. Thoughts are chasing themselves around my mind and trying to form themselves into a question. My name is Anton Sherwood from San Francisco. I first identified myself as a libertarian. I'm sorry, I hear my voice echoing from the room here. And I first identified myself as a libertarian about 8 years ago and joined the party 2 years ago, and last year ran a largely paper campaign for the Assembly. My question or comment, whatever you call it, is partly a response to Dick Ryder, actually. David Friedman has recently remarked that in 1961 he explained, as a freshman at Harvard, he was explaining libertarianism, although he probably didn't call it that, to a classmate who listened carefully and interestedly and finally said, "Yes, but you can't be serious." 15 years later, he said, the answer would have been, "You're seriously crazy." And now he finds himself...
You need to phrase your question.
Phrase my question, yes. Is our purpose to elect libertarian candidates, or is our purpose to legitimize the concept of liberty and create a libertarian world?
Boy, am I getting tired. The answer is both.
Well, Steve stole my thunder. What can I say?
Hi, my name is Ron Uberscher, and I'm a brand new member from all the way up in Mountain View, California. And I'm not a commie or a narc, but I did sign the agreement. But when I did sign it, even though I've read quite a bit about the Libertarian Party and voted Libertarian in the last several elections, I didn't really know what it meant. I didn't think of the tax angle. So my question is, what's the point of putting this on a forum when you've got initiates that maybe haven't really talked to true libertarians, not really knowing what it means and signing it or not signing it or getting bent out of shape about it? Why not, if it's an important principle, why not put it in at the time that you get people together for a convention or election campaign or something like that and get them to sign it at that point?